Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. They kidnapped Thomas and Paris. Grace spills a final secret when Bill wants to kill her. Lee explains Bill's vengeful vow and Sheila's moral dilemma. Lee Finnegan owes Sheila Carter Sharp an explanation. Bill Spencer, on the other hand, says he will hurt Grace Buckingham. Continue reading, and let's talk about what will happen in the upcoming CBS soap opera episode. Lee Finnegan defines Let's start with Lee, who didn't intend for anyone to learn her secret. However, Sheila discovered that it was a comatose Luna Nozawa behind that curtain. Sheila will be overjoyed at first to see that her granddaughter is still alive. You can anticipate that Sheila will demand answers from Lee once the shock has subsided. In a preview clip for next week, Sheila asks the good doctor why she saved Luna. After all, Lee wasn't afraid to say that she didn't like Luna and didn't trust her. Sheila Carter Sharp's moral dilemma. However, after Sheila gets the intel, Lee might put her in an impossible situation. There is no way anyone will understand Lee doing this for Luna. Particularly in light of everything the young woman has done to Lee's loved ones. So, Lee is going to ask that Sheila keep Luna being alive a secret. At least, for the time being. That will place Sheila in a difficult moral predicament. The one person that she usually turns to can't know Luna is alive. Deacon Sharp actually explodes whenever Luna's name is mentioned. So, Sheila will make a decision. Liam Spencer's bombshell. The bold and the beautiful spoilers for the next episode reveal that Liam Spencer and Hope Logan are still shell-shocked when Bill Spencer arrives home. Liam instantly rants to his father about Grace's confession. Naturally, Bill will want to exact his own vengeance. Bill Spencer's vengeful vow. It would be easy to see Bill ask where Grace is now. Bill could attempt to catch up with Hope and Liam when they explain that Grace was taken to the police station by John Finn Finnegan. If Finn received a hospital emergency call and had to leave, it would be like the soap opera. Grace would vanish when Bill offered to hand her over to the authorities. It seems that Bill is in his fix-it phase. Lately, it seems that Bill tries to reform and fix damaged people. However, Bill may find that this is the last straw. Is it possible that Grace's scheme will turn Bill back into the vengeful villain we all know and love? Hope slaps Grace, Finn holds furious Liam back. Grace Buckingham was slapped by Hope Logan for her fraud. John Finn Finnegan also had to hold furious Liam Spencer back, so here's how Friday's B&B episode went down. At Forrester Creations, Katie Logan was taken aback over Bill Spencer's news about paying $1 million for Liam's experimental surgery. Grace was Bill's miracle worker, and he would have paid a lot more for her. Although Bill acted like a tyrant in the past, he was glad to have another chance to do things right and have a better father-son relationship with Liam. At the Spencer mansion, Liam and Hope worried his cancer was back, but Grace assured them that wasn't the case. Hope and Liam were relieved when they resumed praising Grace, but Finn persuaded them to accept the truth. Grace came clean about there never being any cancer at all since she faked the scans following Liam's brain bleed. Liam also found out that the procedure was fake and that he'd been given medication to make him think he was getting worse. Hope realized there were $1 million reasons for Grace to do this and eventually snapped about her being no better than Reese Buckingham. As Liam realized what all this meant, he lunged toward Grace in a fit of fury. Despite Finn's efforts to calm Liam down and prevent him from attacking Grace, Liam was still furious. Grace attempted to explain the bookmaker's pursuit of her and her daughters due to Reese's previous gambling debts. However, Liam and Hope clearly didn't have any compassion for Grace considering how low she sank. Hope stepped forward and slapped Grace across the face before calling her sick. After Liam ranted about what Grace put his family through and how she'd robbed them of months of their lives, Grace vowed to turn herself in. Finn said he'd take Grace to the police station, so Hope embraced Liam once they were alone and processing all this. At the hospital, Lee Finnegan refused once more to provide Sheila Sharp with information regarding Luna Nozawa's remains. After Lee picked the dropped drugs off the floor and left, Sheila found a stray bottle and mulled it over. Sheila eventually knocked on the door of Lee's place and pretended she was a delivery person. When Lee opened up, Sheila tried to worm her way in since she suspectedly was using drugs to cope with Luna's death. Lee blocked Sheila from entering and left Sheila in pain since her foot was jammed in the doorway. However, Sheila finally managed to barge inside and pulled back the curtain to reveal a very much alive Luna. Grace admits, Luna and Lee's drugs are discovered by Sheila. Grace Buckingham confesses. Sheila Carter Sharp finds Luna Nozawa. Additionally, Lee Finnegan faces drug-related allegations. Grace Buckingham confesses. With John Finnegan standing next to her, Grace admits Liam never had a tumor. Hope Logan and Liam Spencer's mouths fall open. Grace simply smiles at Finn because they are misunderstood. Lope continues gushing about Grace being a saint. She's feeling bad about this. Finn tells Liam to stop talking and let Grace make her statement about the brain tumor. Grace says she did something. The scans took longer than they should have. She changed the brain scans. Liam is confused, and the doctor is embarrassed. Hope is also perplexed. The tumor was never there, Grace blurts out. Liam is shocked, he has never been ill with cancer. What about the symptoms, those were real? Liam says he did have brain cancer. Grace claims that no tumor ever existed. Hope brings up the operation. The doctor says she just made it look like she performed surgery. Liam shows her the incisions. Finn clarifies that the incisions were small. Hope demands to know how nobody caught this. Grace was able to treat Liam because the prescriptions caused his symptoms. The patient wants to know why Grace would do that. Hope sneers and brings up a million reasons. Everyone freezes for a few moments, then Liam tries to tackle Grace. Finn stops him as Grace jumps back. Finn is struggling to stop Liam from tearing Grace apart. As if she were the victim, the doctor begins to weep. Hope cries and holds Liam as he has a vengeful glare in his eyes. Liam tells Grace not to start with her ashamed speech. She terrorized Liam and put his family through hell. Grace says it's because of Reese Buckingham. He owed thugs a lot of money and so they came after her. Zoe Buckingham and Paris Buckingham were threatened. Grace brings up Hope's children. Liam calls it extortion. Hope goes up to the doctor and slaps her. Hope says first Reese, now her. You're sick. Liam says Grace robbed him and his family of months of their lives. Grace says she's going to turn herself in. Finn will tell them everything after he takes Grace to the police station. Katie Logan and Bill Spencer talk about Ridge Forrester rescuing Brooke Logan. The brunette brings up Liam. Bill credits Grace as a hero. It was worth every dollar, Bill says. That makes Katie look confused. Bill explains that's what the treatment cost. Additionally, to save Liam, he would have paid more. Katie thinks it's all kind of strange. Bill knows he can't make up for getting Luna Nozawa out of prison. As if Liam's cancer wasn't enough. Then, Grace offered a miracle. Sheila Carter Sharp's discovery. If Lee is on leave from the hospital, Sheila wants to know why she has all of the medical supplies. The waitress begs for the location of Luna's remains. Lee says she doesn't have time for this and leaves with her purse of drugs. Sheila follows Lee and comes to a stop when she realizes it's a pill bottle. Sheila looks at the medication and thinks to herself. Lee is sitting with a comatose Luna. There is a knock on the door. Lee asks who it is and Sheila uses a fake voice to say, delivery. The doctor didn't order anything. Sheila gets her to open the door, but she hides Luna behind a curtain. Sheila tries to force her way in when Luna cracks open the door. Sheila keeps pushing, and she informs Lee of what she has done. Lee won't let her in. Sheila takes the pills and says that she needs them because she is in mourning for Luna. Oh dear, Sheila has the completely wrong idea. Lee, drugs aren't the answer. The doctor denies being on drugs, but Sheila insists on talking. Lee asks her to go and Sheila agrees, then shoves the door open and gets inside. What is going on, Lee? She must leave, the doctor tells her. Sheila inquires regarding the curtain. When Sheila rips away the curtain, she sees Luna. Lee Finnegan as she faced the piercing, predatory gaze of Sheila Carter Sharp, a gaze now alight with a terrifying blend of shock and burgeoning, desperate hope. Lee hadn't planned for this moment, hadn't envisioned anyone, least of all the volatile Sheila, piercing the veil of her secret, the secret lying comatose and vulnerable behind the stark white curtain in room 304, Luna Nozawa, alive. Sheila's initial reaction, a gasp choked with disbelieving joy, the raw, primal relief of a grandmother discovering her grandchild defied death itself, was almost worse for Lee to witness than the anticipated rage. It was a vulnerability that made the inevitable demand for answers, now crashing down with the force of a tidal wave, even more perilous. Why? Sheila hissed, the single word loaded with decades of suspicion, her eyes narrowing, stripping away Lee's professional veneer. Why in God's name would you save her? The unspoken accusations hung thick in the sterile air, Lee's icy disdain for Luna, her vocal mistrust after Luna's perceived betrayals against Lee's own family, Steffi, Finn, the children. Saving Luna wasn't just unexpected, in Sheila's worldview, it was an inexplicable act bordering on madness. Lee, steeling herself, knew the flimsy justifications of medical oaths wouldn't suffice here, not with Sheila, not with the tangled history poisoning the well between them. Her explanation, when it came, was a low, tense murmur, stripped of the usual clinical detachment, revealing a motivation forged not in compassion, but in a crucible of unbearable guilt and a desperate, twisted attempt to reclaim some sliver of control over a life spiraling into chaos. Luna's survival wasn't mercy, it was Lee's own penance, a heavy stone laid on the grave of her conscience for failures real and imagined, a burden she now confessed not to find solace, but because Sheila's discovery left her no other choice, forcing the truth into the light where it withered under scrutiny. Yet, Lee's confession was merely the first tremor in the coming earthquake. Her next words, uttered with a chilling pragmatism that momentarily eclipsed Sheila's shock, plunged the older woman into an abyss of moral torment far deeper than mere surprise. No one can know, Lee stated, her voice devoid of plea, yet heavy with undeniable imperative. Especially not now. Especially not after everything. No one will understand this, Sheila. They will see only betrayal, only madness. The implication was a vice tightening around Sheila's heart, absolute secrecy. Luna's survival must remain hidden, a ghost existing only in this sterile room and the fraught space between Lee and Sheila herself. This demand transformed Sheila's initial shock into a suffocating moral quagmire. The person she relied upon most, her anchor in the stormy seas of her own chaotic existence, Deacon Sharp, was the last person who could ever learn this truth. Luna's name alone was a lit match thrown onto the dry tinder of Deacon's rage, a rage born of grief and the perceived destruction Luna wrought upon their fragile family unit. Sheila's instinct, forged in a lifetime of survival that often meant sharing burdens with Deacon, screamed to confess, to seek his counsel, to share the impossible weight of the secret. But Lee's stark warning echoed, revealing Luna's survival wouldn't bring solace, it would detonate their already precarious world. Could Sheila, whose own moral compass had spun wildly for decades, truly bear this alone? Could she look into Deacon's eyes, day after day, knowing the truth that would shatter him anew, knowing the granddaughter he believed dead breathed just miles away? The dilemma was excruciating, betray Lee's desperate, arguably self-serving, trust and risk unleashing Deacon's fury and incomprehension upon an already fragile situation, or become the sole keeper of a secret that poisoned her connection to the one man whose faith in her redemption was her lifeline, condemning herself to a solitary hell of deception. Every fiber of her being yearning for Deacon's support warred violently with the terrifying consequences of disclosure, leaving her paralyzed, adrift in a sea of impossible choices where every shore promised ruin. While Sheila grappled with her silent, soul-crushing burden in the hospital's hushed tension, a tempest of a very different kind was gathering force miles away at the Spencer mansion. Bill Spencer, a man whose presence often charged the air with latent power, found his son Liam and the still pale Hope Logan engulfed in the aftershocks of Grace Buckingham's devastating confession, the admission of her calculated, cruel deception that tore apart Liam's life and marriage. Bill entered not as a patriarch, but as an avenging force barely contained within his expensive suit. Liam, raw and trembling with a toxic cocktail of betrayal and fury, didn't need prompting. The dam burst, the story of Grace's machinations tumbling out in a torrent of anguished rage. Bill listened, his expression hardening from concern into something far more dangerous, the familiar, chilling glint of predatory intent returning to his eyes after a period of uncharacteristic restraint. This wasn't just an attack on his son, it was an affront to the Spencer name, a violation of the fragile order Bill had, in his own flawed way, tried to maintain recently during his self-proclaimed fix-it phase, an era marked by uncharacteristic attempts at diplomacy and reforming damaged souls like Sheila. Grace Buckingham, however, represented a line crossed in blood-red ink. Her meticulously planned lie, weaponizing paternity to shatter a family, wasn't damage to be repaired, it was a declaration of war requiring annihilation. "Where is she?" Bill's voice was dangerously low, a rumble before the eruption. Learning that John Finnegan was transporting Grace to the police station ignited a new, volatile plan. The soap opera's inevitable machinations seemed to unfold before him, Finn's pager buzzing with a hospital emergency, a conveniently timed crisis pulling the conscientious doctor away. Bill saw the opening instantly, the gallant offer to ensure Grace reached the authorities, a smooth transition of custody. Only Grace would never make it to the station. She would vanish, swallowed by the city or by Bill Spencer's boundless resources and far darker impulses. The veneer of the reformer cracked and fell away, revealing the vengeful titan beneath. Grace's scheme hadn't just hurt his son, it had reignited the primal, ruthless core of Bill Spencer. This wasn't about fixing anymore, it was about making Grace Buckingham suffer consequences so profound they would echo as a warning for eternity. The vow wasn't spoken aloud in that room, but it hung in the charged air, palpable and terrifying. Grace would pay, not with jail time, but with a vengeance meticulously crafted by a man who had rediscovered the brutal satisfaction of being the villain everyone feared, the storm unleashed. The question ceased to be if Bill would break bad again. Grace's treachery had answered it definitively, turning his tentative steps towards redemption into ashes scattered by the gale force of his resurrected wrath. The stage was set, Lee's secret festering in Sheila's conscience, Sheila trapped between impossible loyalties, and Bill Spencer, vengeance incarnate, striding back into the shadows, ready to wage a very personal, very dangerous war. Hope Logan's palm connecting sharply with Grace Buckingham's cheek. It was a sound that echoed not just through the opulent room, but through months of carefully constructed lies, shattering the illusion of a miracle and laying bare a monstrous deception. Hope, her face contorted with a fury born of profound betrayal, hissed the word sick at Grace, the single syllable dripping with venom and encapsulating the utter revulsion flooding her being. This seismic moment, the culmination of a devastating revelation, was the violent punctuation mark on a day that began with trembling relief and spiraled into a vortex of rage, manipulation, and the desperate intervention of John Finnegan, who moments prior had physically restrained Hope's husband, Liam Spencer, from unleashing his own primal fury upon the architect of their torment. The catalyst was Grace's agonizing confession, delivered under Finn's insistent, truth-seeking pressure, Liam's terrifying cancer battle, the experimental surgery that seemingly saved him, the agonizing months of fear, all of it was a meticulously orchestrated, grotesque scam. There had never been any cancer. Liam's initial brain bleed was real, but the subsequent scans showing a terminal, inoperable malignancy? Fabricated by Grace. The revolutionary, life-saving procedure Finn supposedly performed? A complete sham. The debilitating symptoms Liam endured post-surgery? Induced by medication Grace administered, cruelly designed to mimic disease progression, to make the recovery seem miraculous. Hope, piecing together the monstrous puzzle with chilling speed, zeroed in on the motive with laser focus. A million reasons, she spat, connecting Bill Spencer's enormous payment for the fake surgery to Grace's desperation, branding her no better than Reese Buckingham, a name synonymous with past sins and familial betrayal. It was this damning comparison, this reduction of their profound suffering to a mere financial transaction, that ignited the powder keg within Liam. The transformation in Liam was instantaneous and terrifying. The relief that had softened his features moments before evaporated, replaced by a raw, animalistic fury. The realization that he hadn't battled a disease but had been played, that his terror, his pain, the precious time stolen from him and his family, months spent under the shadow of death, saying goodbyes, grappling with mortality, was the result of Grace's calculated greed and deceit, was too monstrous to bear. With a guttural roar ripped from the depths of his soul, Liam lunged towards Grace, a whirlwind of unleashed rage intent on physical retribution. It was Finn, the man who had unwittingly been made a pawn in Grace's scheme, whose medical reputation was tarnished by her lies, who acted swiftly and decisively. He stepped between the enraged husband and the cowering schemer, his strong arms locking around Liam, physically hauling him back, becoming a human barrier against the storm of vengeance. "Liam, no. Stop," Finn commanded, his voice strained but firm, grounding the hurricane of emotion threatening to consume everything. He managed, through sheer presence and reason cutting through the red haze, to calm Liam fractionally, though the younger man remained coiled, vibrating with suppressed fury, his eyes burning holes into Grace. Her attempts to mitigate her crime, the desperate pleas about dangerous bookies pursuing her over her late husband Reese's old, crushing gambling debts, the fear for her daughters, fell on utterly deaf ears. Liam, his voice trembling with the magnitude of his stolen life, articulated the true cost. "You robbed us. Robbed us of months. Put us through hell." Hope's slap was the visceral embodiment of this shared, unutterable loss and betrayal. Faced with their implacable condemnation and the threat of Liam's barely contained wrath, Grace, cornered and defeated, offered the only shred of accountability left: "I'll turn myself in." Finn, perhaps seeking his own form of closure or ensuring justice would be served without further violence, volunteered to escort her to the police station. As the door closed behind Finn and the architect of their nightmare, Hope and Liam collapsed into each other's arms, a desperate, trembling embrace amidst the ruins of their reality, trying to process the incomprehensible. Their salvation was a fraud, their hero a villain, their suffering a profitable fiction. Simultaneously, miles away in the sterile corridors of the hospital, a different kind of tension simmered, one rooted in a hidden truth even more shocking than Grace's deception. Lee Finnegan, Finn's formidable mother, maintained her steely resistance against the persistent, unnerving presence of Sheila Sharp. Once again, Sheila, driven by her obsessive need to know, had cornered Lee, demanding information about the fate of Luna Nozawa, whose apparent demise had been a recent tragedy. Lee, her expression a mask of cold disdain, delivered the same unwavering refusal she had before. Sheila would get nothing from her.